Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Coach Lewis Shine. I'm so happy and excited to talk to you guys today about my Foul-TimeOut Chart template. It's such an amazing thing. I'll give you a little background about it. Last season, as a Division I associate head coach, uh, being on the sideline, you have your different responsibilities, and coach may want to know different things during the game, timeouts, halftime, post game. And, you know, when I was coaching in D2, I always carried a flip notebook that I wrote things in. So I would come out, I would write the starters in the book. And, as they got fouls, I would chart them and different things would happen. I would chart them. And two of the stats that I really, was over and I really take pride in is the foul situations and the timeout situations. And as you coaches know that are watching this, those are two categories that can make or break a game, that could change things. It can also offer strategy so that in different situations during the game, especially when the game is coming down to a close, you can gain the advantage based on how you use that information given. Who has the fouls, the team fouls, the timeout situation. You can really use that information to win a game. And so those became two different stats, the timeouts and the foul situation, with team and player. That became something near and dear to my heart. And last season, coaching Division I, that's something I really got a hold of and really started to really use on the sideline as my head coach. Would ask for those things and different in-game strategies and different things like that. So those are the main two that I used. And so I think it might have been like the first couple games that we got done with, and I had a notebook or something like that. And I just kind of got tired of scribbling things and not being able to read things, and just wanted to get a little more organization. And I think at that time in the office, we were really just kind of choreographing things to where we had forms and protocol and different templates for things so that we can get things in order. And I thought to myself, I said, you know what would make it easier on the sideline for me? So I just began to experiment, trying to craft some things together. And I started doing a chart for fouls and timeouts that really helped me. And once I got that form down, I began to develop that form for each and every game, even at some points did it for several games out so that I can already have it. And then I just put it in the folder for that particular game. So when that game came up, I already had the foul and timeout template done for that game. So in this video, I'm actually going to go through that form. I want to say that I appreciate everybody that has purchased a form. The video is really going to explain it. The template can be just a template, but I believe that my heart behind it and just explaining what things you can do with it and how you can strategize using this form, I think that's going to be what's more beneficial and valuable to you coaches or aspiring coaches that are watching this. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want you guys to do is to either pull up your form or grab it out if you have a printed copy of it already. And the first thing we're going to do is go into the timeout portion that's on the top of the form. As you'll see on there that it says home team timeouts and away team timeouts. And the first thing I want to say is, as you look over this form, there's going to be things that I'm going to go over that you can actually customize yourself. That's why I wanted to send this to you in an editable form in an Excel document so that you can go in and you can type your team's name in, and you can type the away team's name. You can customize the color to your team versus the other team. There's a number of things that I'll go over as we go over this form that I can actually show you where you can edit them and customize it yourself. So the first thing is the home team and away team section right at the top. Timeouts were very near and dear to myself and my coaching staff last season when I coached, and we definitely had to keep a track of those timeout counts, because as you know, a game can go through and then you get to the end of the game and you're not quite sure how many timeouts you have if you're just going off the top of your head, or you may not even be sure of the other team's timeout count but you may know yours. And I believe that the mark of a great coach is to make sure that you know the timeout count of both teams, because that can help you now in strategy, where it can depend, it can depend on what you're doing on the court at what time. It can actually dictate, it can dictate your movements, what you're going to do. Are you going to press now? Are you not going to press? So the timeout section, there's only one section on this whole sheet with timeouts, but it's more of the understanding of why that section's there and what you're going to do with it. So home teams, let's look at the home team section. You have home team timeouts, full timeouts. So in the college game, I didn't put particular numbers there because it changed from college to pro, high school, middle school, whatnot. So full timeouts. We know that in the women's game, in college basketball, which was what I was a part of, we have one full timeout for the entire game, and we have 3 30-second timeouts. So that was a big deal because you can strategize on how to use those. One of my things that I like to do was I like to save my timeouts to the end of the game, unless there was a reason that I had to use them at the beginning of the game. Somewhere if a team went on a run, or if you have a marker where you say, hey, me as a coach, if a team goes on an 8-0 run, we got to call a timeout. If they go 4-0, we're good. So you got to establish those markers for yourself. But back to the timeouts. So we have it down here where there's a full timeout box. You can mark it with a 1. You can mark it with a slash. However you want to do that. It's just a place where you can mark and say, I know that we used one timeout. 30-second timeouts. That's where you can mark and say, I've used a 30. I've used 2. I've used 3 30s. Same with the opposing team. You can see where the opposing team has used one timeout, 30-second timeout. So this is just an area where you can mark it so that you can know. And this is why this is good, because there's times where before I did this kind of chart, I was running back and forth to the scores table during timeouts, or just during times where I could have been sitting down aiding my head coach and being with my other coaches. I was running back and forth because I was unsure about the timeout count, or I wanted to know how many timeouts they had, which is, it's good to be able to go back and forth. But when you're making it a occasional thing, it can take time away from you. It can become a distraction. It can become a little too much, in my opinion. So if I have the timeout count, the only time I may have to go back is maybe between a quarter, or maybe at halftime before I go in to meet the coaches for the huddle before we go in to address the team and let them know kind of how the timeout count is. You can go here and there, or you can get a manager to go. But you can check your timeout count against the scorers table timeout count. And then if there's any discrepancy, then you have a count for yourself and you're not just oblivious or you don't know what's going on. You can kind of have a marker for yourself. Here's another way that this can help. You're in a game, you're down 2. You just made free throws, and now the other team is taking the ball out. So now, if you know that the other team is out of timeouts, then one of your strategies can be, I'm going to press this team now because, number one, they don't have any timeouts. So if they don't get the ball in, they can't save themselves with a timeout. So what that would tell me as a coach is, you know what, one of my strategies may be that I'm going to press and deny the inbounds pass so that it can make it hard for them to get it in. And then if you get a 5-second count, then that's a turnover. So you can use the timeout count in a number of ways that can really help you. So just that little bit of information can really help you. So that's why it's really important that as assistant coaches, as an associate head coach, even as a head coach, but more importantly, the assistants, that you know your timeout count so that you can further relay that to your head coach, because you may be in the heat of a battle, heat of a game, and the coach may say, how many timeouts we got? Quickly. And you may not have like 2 minutes to figure out how many timeouts you have, or, hey, can you run to the scores table manager and see how many we have? You might have to reel it off to her so that she can know right away, because if you say, coach, we're out of timeouts, that'll give her a marker to say, hey, we can't call anything. But if you don't know, and it's a critical time, and you might have a split second to call this timeout before your player grabs the ball and tries to inbound, you need to know those things very quickly. So if you can take a quick glance at this foul timeout template and say, hey, we don't have any, or we have one, or take a full, coach, or take a 30. You may be close to a media timeout, and the media timeout may happen at a certain marker during the quarter. So that before a certain marker, and it's different in different sports. At a certain marker or after the 6-minute mark, the first dead ball is going to be a media. Well, that if that's going to happen, I know I have a 30-second timeout available. So you may have 1:30 left, but your team needs a rest. So you're going to take that 30 very close to that media timeout marker so that it can roll into a full timeout. And that's one of the ways that you can make a 30-second timeout a full timeout. So there's just different strategies, but the main thing is, without getting into all the strategy, which I'm going to talk a lot about in videos to come, but the main thing here is knowing your timeout count can be a baseline for all of those other things to come, and those strategy points and just different things that you can do with it. So this first part is simply to mark your timeout count. How many timeouts you have, how many full timeouts you've used, how many full timeouts the other team has used, and how many 30-second timeouts that each team, yourself as well as your opponent, has used. All right, so in this next section, we're going to talk about player fouls. These are very, very important, and it's great to have a tool like this so that you can really record it. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I used to have a notebook with the names written down, and I would just put a slash next to the player fouls, and somewhere up in there, it would happen here or there where I might miss a foul from somebody. And now it's like, oh man, she had 5 fouls. I didn't know it. Which you never want that to happen in the game, especially as a head coach or any coach. You want to be on top of these fouls because, like I say, it can turn into strategy and help you to do different things. It's going to help you to coach a certain way or dictate the game in a different way if you know exactly what's going on with these fouls. So if you take a look down below the timeout section, you have it says home team fouls, and just below that you see away team fouls. Now with this, one of the things the first thing that I've normally done is, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, I would go through and type in the name and number of every single player on the home team and every single player on the away team, so that I can already have that out the way. So when I pull this file up and I print it, I can have it on a nice clipboard or on the top of my notebook, and it's ready to go. I can see the names as clear as day. So one of the things I used to do was I would put the players' names in based on their number in chronological order. So player so-and-so number 1, and the next player number 2 or number 5, whatever the number is, so that it's a quick reference in the game, so that if you're looking for a name and there's a lot of names there, it's easier to go down to the person's number. And you can get there pretty quickly because in a game situation, things happen so quick. So if you're having a brain freeze and it's like, can't think of her name, or especially on the away team where you're not for sure what the person's name is, maybe you do because you were that player in scout that week. But if you just know their number, you can go down to their number. So my suggestion would be to put the players and numbers down in chronological order. And normally on most college sites and pro sites, they're already like that. So you can just go in and you can just look at the name and type it in as it goes. It makes it real simple for you. Now, another strategy, for you may not want to do it like that. You may want to do it based on the 8 players that normally play, or the 8 players that the other team's going to play, and maybe a couple more. So you might have 10 on your list. I put 15 down there because normally you have a roster of 15 maxed out that are eligible to play in the college game. So I put 15 down there, but you can put starters first and then reserves. However you want to customize that, you can go ahead and do that. So as far as the colors, you can customize the colors. So I put blue and kind of like a red salmon looking color, but you can customize those, which I used to do. I used to customize it based on the color of the team that we were playing and the color that we were. So that's the names and the numbers. The next thing is you'll look off to the right of where it says home team fouls, and that's where it has quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. So you're going to do this section similar to how you did the timeout section. Anytime a player gets a foul, if it's quarter one, you're simply putting a mark right there in quarter one. If they get a second foul, you want to put a mark in quarter one, and they got 2 fouls in the first quarter. And then the same, you want to do it with the away team. So this just gives you a quick reference to see who has fouls, who doesn't have fouls, who's good to go for the second half. One of your players has 3 fouls. Okay, you can let coach know that right away, whether it's in a timeout, whether it's at halftime, so you can know who you're starting coming out of halftime. You can use it for situations such as you may have a player that you're playing against and they have one foul in the first quarter. If they get a second foul in the first quarter, you're looking down at this sheet now and you're letting your head coach like, hey, coach, number 2 for the opposing team has 2 fouls. And if that's a premium way that you strategize, the way I would think is if a player has 2 fouls in the first quarter and they're a starter and you're going to keep that player in the game, I got to let my head coach know immediately, because now we have to run a play or run a ISO right to that player. We're going to that player because we're trying to draw a foul on that player to get their 3rd foul. So not only you're moving the situation from, okay, that player has 2 fouls. If the coach can get them out the game, then you'll probably see that player maybe a little bit in the second quarter. But if you use this and you're keeping it simple and you can just look down and say, oh, they have 2. You can let your coach know that. You can go at that player, and that player, you draw a 3rd foul on that player. You won't see that player probably until mid-second half, somewhere in the 3rd quarter. You won't see him anymore. That's a good strategy for your team. So what this is simply creating for you is a grid that you can make a quick access, a quick glance, and say, she has 2. When I had this on the sideline, it was so much easier than me scribbling on a piece of paper, writing something down, and then I go to quick reference it, or I go after a game and I'm trying to look back at my chicken scratch and I can't read it. And coach wants to know what was the foul count, which we can look on the website because they update the stats. But right after a game, when we have our wrap-up meeting with our coaches and want to talk a little bit about it, you may not be able to hop on the website. You may just be fresh off the court. So you want to be able to look down and have a quick access tally of who had what. How many fouls did we have? How many team fouls did they have? How many player fouls did so-and-so have? You know, you want to have that quick glance. So though this may seem real simple and you can go other places to access it on the website when they update the stats or different things like that, you want to have something as a coach right there with you so you can simply look down and see how many marks you have and tally it at the end of the game with a 5 in a circle. We had 5 fouls there, or number 10 had 3 fouls, and you can see which quarter that player had the fouls in. So home team fouls, away team fouls. This is just an easy way to tally player fouls, how many fouls the player has, in which quarter the player has the fouls in, so that it can better help you strategize for media timeouts, halftime, end of game situations. You can just simply look down. You don't have to try to dictate what you wrote because your penmanship wasn't the best during the excitement of the game. You can look down on this chart, see how many marks you have, communicate that to the coach, and it's a lovely day. So this is our home team fouls, away team fouls for our players. Now this next section is probably one of my favorites because there's so much strategy involved in it. So if you take a look over to the right of where it says home team fouls and away team fouls, there's boxes, and at the top of the box it says team fouls. I love keeping team fouls. What I have for you here is 4 columns. You'll see Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, which stands for, the Q stands for quarter. So quarter 1, I marked down 10 team fouls, and in each of the quarters, you'll see 10, respectively, you'll see 10 boxes below it. You know, you may have some sports where 16 fouls will get you in the bonus. You know, you have your 18 foul mark, you have your 10 team foul mark. So, you know, it's different situations with different levels, pro, college, high school, middle school. So I wanted to put 10 down there, and you can customize this too. If you need to add more, you need to take away, whatever the strategy is for your particular team, you can customize this team foul section to your liking. So the reason this is very important is because one of the things that I like to do is get teams in the bonus as quick as possible. So, sometimes that may happen with a team that's aggressive as far as driving. But any way that we can get teams in the bonus quickly, that's one of the things I love the most. And so keeping track of this stat really helps, especially in the last quarter. For instance, there was a lot of situations that I experienced in the Division I game where we may be down a few points, or I won't even say a few. I'll say say you're going into the fourth quarter with 10, you're down 10. So one of the things that you do not want to happen is for that clock to go fast and not be stopped at all. So a lot of up and down, that quarter is going to be gone, and it's going to take away your chances to cut into that lead. So the clock can become your enemy. But one of the things that you can do to counteract that is try to get the other team in the bonus as quickly as possible. So you want to do things to draw fouls. You want to run plays that that draw fouls. And so this is maybe one of those stats that you might want to take during practice so that you can know kind of what to go to and what's going to give you the highest probability to draw fouls. So, if you have a player that likes to drive and, they go to the foul line more than anybody on your team, that might be a player that you might want to lean towards in terms of drawing fouls and going to the foul line and hitting shots. So if we can do that and we can get to our bonus foul marker, then every time we go to the rack or every time we get fouled for the rest of the quarter, we're going to the line and you're getting points at the foul line with the clock stopped, and it's free points, free money. All right. So, you may set a goal and say, what, we want to get the other team, we want to get into the bonus at the spot by the time the 6-minute mark hits. If we can do that, it can slow the game down and it can give us a chance to come back. It puts more pressure on the other team because now not only are they putting you at the line every time they foul you, but now they're racking up fouls. So, and now they have to use other options. So if they have a player that's really been playing good and they're guarding your player that has been driving to the hole, now if they know they have 4 fouls and the other team needs them in the game, but they're guarding your best player, they have to switch that player off now because they want to use that player to score and they can't afford to foul that player out. So it's a lot of different strategy you can do, but the strategy begins by clearly knowing how many team fouls you have. How many team fouls does the other team have? So once you know that, then you can begin to strategize and go into these different levels of strategy during the game time situations. For yourself, if you have your team fouls, you want to make sure that your team fouls stay low because you don't want to send the other team to the foul line the entire fourth quarter. Or you don't want the team at the end of the game, they shot 40 free throws. But this will help you to see that, hey, we got 2 team fouls in the first quarter, or we just got our 4th team foul. Okay, you call the timeout, you let everybody know, hey, we don't need any more fouls, no more fouls in this first quarter. Because if the other team scores a couple more buckets because you kind of, backed off of them a little bit, that's not as detrimental in the first quarter as it is in the fourth quarter. So this chart will help you to clearly track how many team fouls you have by simply putting a mark. Under Q1, you can put a mark at number 1. That lets you know that you have 1 team foul, X or check mark, whatever works for you. And you can mark it down. And then you can look below and you can clearly see, oh, the other team has 5 team fouls. That will give you a signal as an assistant coach to say, hey, coach, they have 5 team fouls. The next foul, we're at the line. So that coach can say, hey, we're calling this, or we're going to dribble drive, or whatever the case, because we know that draws fouls, and that can give you a higher probability to get fouled and then put you at the line, all because of you as an assistant coach or associate head or even a head coach can do a quick check down at your chart and say, oh, the other team has 5 team fouls, and that triggers you to let your coach know. So this was one of my favorites because we had a lot of, when I was a Division I associate head coach, had a lot of situations, in-game situations every quarter especially towards the end of the quarters where these numbers mattered because they gave you the advantage one way or the other. You may think like the second quarter doesn't mean anything, but in the end of the game, those 2 or 3 points that we had to give up because we were in foul trouble, or the player that we had to pull out because they were in foul trouble, it matters. But looking at this chart can even help you with comparison. So when you go in at halftime, you can say, you know what? You can look back at your player fouls and say, our player got 3 quick fouls guarding this person. Let's change them. But then you can also look back at your team fouls and say, man, first quarter, when we ran it that way, when we had that defensive matchup, we went the first quarter and the second quarter and we got in foul trouble. So let's change that. It can just help you to see it. But like I say, the baseline of everything is just being able to clearly look at your chart and see that I have or we have 5 team fouls, or we have 3 team fouls, and the other team, they're in the bonus. I've seen teams play a game and they have the other team in the bonus, but will continue to run plays that don't put any pressure on the defense. So you're playing a whole quarter. I've seen teams get in the bonus with 6 minutes left in the quarter, but the other team never draws a foul the rest of the quarter. You know, that's something that you can use this sheet to see that and begin to change up your strategy so that when you hit that marker, so you can highlight 6 on here if you want to, or whatever marker that puts you in, puts the other team or you in the bonus. And when it hits that, you know you're going into this play, or you know you're going into this strategy. So we can put pressure on the opposing team. So this is one of my favorites. Team fouls is an easy tracker. It's an easy way to mark them so that you can clearly see how many team fouls that yourself, your team, or the opposing team has at any given moment of the game. All right, guys. So our final section here is our notes section. If you take a look down below where it says the away team fouls, right below that section at the bottom of the page is a notes section. Now, this was very important for me because as an associate head coach, I was over special situations or the situations of the game, meaning whatever the flow of the game and the timing of the game was, I needed to know exactly what was going on. So if we went into a media timeout, coming into that timeout when we huddled up before we went to address the team, I needed to know whose ball it was coming out of the timeout. You know, sometimes the flow of the game can be going and you just forget, or you have to ask. So I made it a point to, as soon as that horn blew and I see the teams get up and there was a media timeout, before the referee could get it out of his mouth, I was over to the referee trying to see where the ball was going to be spotted. Or I was even over there at times saying, who took the timeout? Did they take a 30? Did they take a media? You kind of want to know the flow of the game. And that's one of the things I loved, because it gave our team an advantage so that even if the other team is not on their game and they don't know what's going on, we'll be out there at the right spot, ready to go while they're still kind of jogging out, or they may not know what's going on in the game. So that's the first piece of this note section. I needed to know what was going on. So in this note section, one of the things I would write down is who had the ball last, or if we got it at the quarter mark, so that if there's any type of situation that's happening where they got the possession arrow wrong, I could say, no, we had the possession at the half, or we did the jump ball. You know, sometimes there's human error, so sometimes the referees may get it wrong, but if you can mark it down and you can at least give a verbal dispute to say, hey, I remember this happened. This is what we had happen. Maybe they'll overturn it, which I've seen some things overturn in that case because we had it marked down or something like that. But one of the main things as well that I used this note section for was if a team was running a zone and I had a suggestion that I wanted to mention to our head coach during the timeout, I will jot that down while the game is going. You know, normally during the game, you can mention a few things and you can make some quick changes, but some changes can only happen during a timeout because they're that big of a deal, where you may have to talk it out or see what we might need to change. So you might need to do that in the context of a huddle. So I would just jot down different notes down there that were pertinent to what my responsibilities were in the game. And then I can bring those notes to our huddle. I can remember times where, it may have been a situation where I say, hey, you know what, we need to go to a press, or we need to pull that 3-2 defense back a little bit, or whatever the defense or the offense, or I think we should run this play. And like I say, during the game, it may not be that type of situation, but as you're sitting on the bench and you're watching what teams are doing, you're kind of thinking like, hey, this is the substitution pattern that we need to go with, or we need to bring this player or that player off the bench to guard that person because this person is not shooting well, or if she's a quicker defender and she can guard that person that keeps blowing by us at the top of the key. Whatever the strategy or different things that you're looking for in a game, you may have one coach that's a defensive coach, so they're watching the defense. You may have one coach that's watching the offense. You may have another coach watching the productivity of their three-point shooting because they're a three-point shooting team that you're playing. Whatever the case, this note section is for you to jot those kind of notes down so that when the opportune time comes, whether that's a timeout, a media timeout, halftime, the closing seconds of a game, you can have your thoughts together so that when your head coach asks for it, your opinion or your suggestion during a timeout or on the bench, she says, what should we do? You can have a quick answer because you've already been thinking about it. So this note section, aside of timeouts, which is very important, aside of your team fouls, aside of your player fouls, this note section is for anything specifically that you're over, that your head coach has specifically asked you to watch and report on during timeouts or any opportune time that you and the coaches meet. Halftime before you go in to address the team. Whenever you may have the chance, you can quickly glance down and say, hey, I was thinking about this, coach, or coach, what do you think about this? And so your head coach will appreciate this because sometimes, I've been in situations where before I had this sheet, I was trying to go off the top of my head or trying to remember something or trying to write it on a notepad and couldn't read it, or it's so many things I've written down. It's just like, okay, I can't remember what part I wrote that I wanted to tell coach. This just gives you an organized way to jot a few notes or a few things down to help you to jog your memory or remember something that you wanted to mention to your head coach. So the note section is key. It just gives you an organized way to remember what you want to bring to the huddle. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video about this template. This has been an amazing journey in terms of using this. I had the opportunity to use it all last season. And so I know what it did for me. And it's just a joy for me to be able to share this with coaches all around the world. And it's been an amazing response. I really appreciate you guys for purchasing this. And not only the video, not only the template, but this video that goes along with it. I really wanted to do this so that not only are you getting a file with a template on it, but you can hear my heart behind it in terms of how I use it and my zeal for wanting to do small things and do them precisely to help win games as a coach. I hope that you felt that from me. I also just wanted to include this video just so that you can kind of know what you're doing and know the different options and ways that you can customize this template so that it can not just be a file that you get and you just see it like, okay, what is this? But you can kind of, some of you may hear me talking and you may say, oh, I'm gonna do this, and it may not have even been in this video. So that's the beauty of it, to just give you a template that can be a catalyst to where you want to dream or where you want to imagine in terms of the different things you can do with it. So I hope that it's been a major blessing to you with this video. And like I say, again, thank you all so much for your response and the hundreds of people that have reached out that wanted the template. And so that's why I really wanted to do the video, to explain kind of what you can do with this template. And, I've talked to people all around the United States. I've had people from Australia and Hawaii and South Africa reach out and wanted to know about this template and wanted to purchase it. And so I'm more than grateful. It's just a blessing to be able to help coaches all over. So thank you so much for your purchase in this. And please follow me on social media. I'm at Lewis Shine on every social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, LinkedIn. You can find me on every one of them. The other thing, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be putting so many things on here, workouts, drills, more information that coaches can learn and glean from, things for players. I love basketball, and I love basketball 360. And so, each and every part of the game and part of coaching, I really get into it and enjoy it. And so I really want to, provide my page as something you can always come to and find something that can help you in your journey as a coach. So make sure you click the subscribe button down low. Give me a thumbs up, and also leave a comment. If this blessed you, if it helped you, leave a comment below and let me know. That's motivating and encouraging even to myself, because, as you're helping people, it really helps you, because it lets you know that, man, it's a big world out here. And even as I've been a coach, I know how the grind was, and I knew how every bit of information that could give me an edge always helped me, because we're in this thing to win. So I appreciate you guys' support. I appreciate you guys subscribing to my channel down below. Also, I just want to let you know, if you're a coach out there, you're looking for somebody to come in, speak to your team, to do a motivational speaking engagement, to do a team building activities, let me know. I'm the person for you. I would love to come in to help your team go to the next level, and speaking to your team, doing some team building, and even speaking to your coaching staff. I have several years of coaching experience, from the pro level to college level to even the lower levels, middle school, and different things like that. But really learned a lot during my pro and college at D1 and D2 level experiences. And I would love to share those things, the different things I did, the graphical things that I created for my programs, the workouts. I also have a strength and conditioning certification. And so my degree was in exercise science. So I have that background as well, and have been able to contribute that knowledge at the pro level and the college level when I've been coaches. So I would love to come in and help you with your program, even have a phone conversation with you to talk about the different things that I can do, and come in to speak to your program doing. So I would love to speak with you. If you're interested, please contact me at the information below, and I would love to set up a call and talk to you. Other than that, thank you guys so much for your purchase for the template. I believe that fouls and timeouts are a major thing in the game, and I think that you can do a lot of things as far as strategy surrounding those two key components that can help you to get an edge on the other team and win a game. I believe that wholeheartedly. So let me know how you guys are doing with this template. You got any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. This has been amazing. Thank you guys for the opportunity, and I look forward to hearing from you guys. Talk to you soon.